Hello, I'm Kathleen Troy. This is number 0840, the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File Program, number 0840. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File Program, you'll meet Russell Van Brocklen, who is known as the Dyslexia Professor. Not only does he teach children with dyslexia, but he also was a dyslexic child. What percentage of people with dyslexia simply go undiagnosed?
You would be incredibly surprised. It's a lot. The schools just keep pushing them through. A lot of times they're not diagnosed until after they fail a third grade reading and writing test for whatever area they're in. And a lot of them are really smart and they're struggling with getting, hot 70s, low 80s, and they say, they're doing okay, and they just let them push them through. It's surprisingly high. Boys tend to act out more, so they're diagnosed earlier. Girls tend to just be quiet and take it, and so people think dyslexia just affects boys more than girls, and that's not the case.
Michael Wendroff is the author of the thriller What Goes Around.
What Goes Around is a thriller about mysterious shootings that are happening in a small town. Two detectives who hate each other, based on what happened in the police academy together, are assigned to the case. On their journey to find out what's going on, they delve into the secret worlds of these terrible hate groups, these incels, supremacists, boogaloo boys. A young naive boy is involved, is caught up in this whole thing. And there's tons of twists and turns until we get to that major twist at the end.
Constantinos Koumontzis is a film producer and an author. His debut novel is called She Looks Like Fun.
The book is a psychological thriller, a suspense thriller that I would say teeters a little bit on the dark horror as well as a little bit of satire. And it follows Anne Bonny, who's hiding beneath the facade of the innocent schoolteacher in Chicago. But she spends her nights as a call girl, masquerading herself through an online escort service to carry out her violent desires. Her two worlds will collide as her dark tendencies cross paths with her normal life. She spirals into madness trying to keep these two lives from combusting.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0840, was dog trainer Kathleen Troy, author of Dear Dylan's Dog Squad. She was a guest back on show number 0837. You can listen to that. And thank you very much, Kathleen, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File Program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. Three nuns in their 80s secretly returned to their Austrian convent near Salzburg after being relocated to a care home against their will. Sisters Bernadette, Regina, and Rita were moved from Kloster Goldenstein in December of 2023, despite promises they could stay for life. The women, assisted by former students and a locksmith, came back in early September to find their home without water, electricity, or their stair lift. Sister Rita said she feels so happy and thankful to be home. The convent was officially dissolved in January of 2024 under oversight of the Archdiocese of Salzburg. Provost Marcus Grazel called their return completely incomprehensible and cited health concerns. Sister Bernadette declared, "Before I die in that old people's home, I would rather go to a meadow and enter eternity that way." Supporters now provide groceries and basic needs while utilities are being restored. So, these Austrian nuns in their 80s have now become celebrities, dare I say stars. Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. For it was written, at least off Broadway 40 years ago.
When we're 80 and sitting on the porch in the old nun's home, and they ask who we are, I just want to say, hey, I was a star!
14 workers at Montana's Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter were hospitalized after FBI agents burned 2 pounds of seized methamphetamine using the facility's incinerator in Billings. Staff and 75 cats and dogs evacuated when smoke filled the building due to negative pressure, pushing fumes in the wrong direction. All 14 employees spent 3 hours in hyperbaric oxygen chambers, treating smoke inhalation after some were exposed for over an hour. An FBI spokesperson confirmed the agency routinely uses outside facilities for controlled drug burns. Building decontamination will take 2 weeks to a month. Okay, so the 14 humans spent time in hyperbaric oxygen chambers. But what happened to the dogs and the cats?
Real quick, why is there a lampshade on your head?
Listen, Gidget, baby. I gotta be honest with you. My owner might have given me a little bit of catnip.
The Angus Scotland Council has a request for visitors to the area's cemeteries. Please remember your loved ones and visit their graves by all means. But please do not leave alcoholic drinks where youngsters can get access to them. Nearly all graveyards in the area have had unopened cans and bottles of alcoholic drinks left behind, leading to reports of children finding and drinking them. The council also mentioned it's illegal to consume alcohol in cemeteries. Said the council, our staff will regularly remove alcoholic drinks and store them for collection again. However, we have no staff working over a weekend when these incidents occurred. Hear that tapping? The ghosts want you to share.
Warriors, come out to play!
And finally, in this section of Stuff All News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, several competitors were disqualified from Scotland's World Stone Skimming Championships after using artificially modified stones. The annual competition on Easdale Island requires participants to use naturally occurring slate from the location, but officials discovered some contestants wielded machine-shaped and smoothed rocks with artificial notches designed to improve throwing. Event tossmaster Kyle Matthews received calls from worried competitors and contacted the rule breakers who confessed their violations. Matthews said, to give them their credit, they deeply apologize for bringing the sport into disrepute. Organizers are considering requiring future participants to select from official stone collections rather than finding their own. Is there a reason why before this year's contest you were allowed to bring your own stones to Scotland's World Stone Skimming Championships? Also, it's a good thing that the perps confessed to their crime because otherwise, how would they prove it? I mean, this contest took place on an island. It's not like they're going to dredge the shores to find the stones that people skipped. So all the perp would have to say is,
"You scumbags haven't got the stones to come after me."
And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program. Russell Van Brocklen is the dyslexia professor, and by that I mean he has a system whereby he can help dyslexic children efficiently and successfully, and yes, he too is dyslexic. Russell joins us from New York via Riverside.com. Hi, Russell.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the program with us. First of all, what are the numbers that we are talking about? What percentage of the population is considered dyslexic?
Unfortunately, my field hasn't really narrowed that down. I would say, honestly, dyslexia is supposed to be the most severe end of the spectrum. I would have to say probably 5 to 10% for more severe cases. Getting mixed up with confusing dyslexia and ADD and ADHD, which from a solution standpoint are very similar. You're probably looking at up at 15 to 20% maximum.
And I would assume this is a guess that I'm going to ask for your next question, and that is what percentage of dyslexic children are undiagnosed?
You would be incredibly surprised. It's a lot. The schools just keep pushing them through. A lot of times they're not diagnosed until after they fail a third grade reading and writing test for whatever area they're in. And a lot of them are really smart and they're struggling with getting, hot 70s, low 80s, and they're saying, they're doing okay, and they just let them push them through. It's surprisingly high. Boys tend to act out more, so they're diagnosed earlier. Girls tend to just be quiet and take it, and so people think dyslexia just affects boys more than girls, and that's not the case.
And what kind of situation helps in the diagnosis and in the recovery? Or I guess maybe recovery is the wrong word, but basically, I'm asking, is it more important to get this diagnosis early? And is it more detrimental to get it later in life?
It is absolutely critical. So if you get it diagnosed in kindergarten, just contact Yale, Google Yale Dyslexia, it's Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creative Studies, and they will tell you how to get it diagnosed in kindergarten. And then you can have the kid reading and writing if you follow their curriculums. There's a lot to select from. They're reading at grade level or close to it by the end of third grade, because that's critical, because K through third you learn to read, fourth and above you read to learn. And if you're not reading at grade level by the end of third grade, it's an academic emergency. But now, instead of it being relatively easy to fix, you're now looking at a private dyslexic school that's about 75 grand a year using an Orton-based approach, and it's 4 to 5 years, and it's about $75,000 per year per kid. So that's generally what happens. Now, just so your audience knows how we can just solve this much easier, I'm going to refer to a book called Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz from Yale, second edition, page number 78, figure number 23. What you will notice, just to know what dyslexia really is the back part of a general education student brain is massively active. The front part of the dyslexic brain is very underactive. I mean, there's almost nothing there in the back. But the front part of my brain is 2.5 times overactive compared to a general education student's brain. That deals with two things: word analysis followed by articulation. So to help a dyslexic during an intervention period, because once you get them through the intervention period, they're fine. We have to focus on the child's speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. We get an audiobook and then a book on that, a couple of years ahead of where we want them to be so they can grow into it. Number two, we focus not on teaching the general to the specific, the way the school districts teach, because that's like trying to grab fog. We teach from the specific to the general. And then what we do is we teach word analysis followed by articulation. And then the dyslexic can learn very rapidly. To give you an example, I have full permission to tell this story. I worked with Kimberly starting last December, to December 2024. She's a homeschooling mom. Her son's name was Reed. He was tested by his state. He was in the mid second grade reading and writing level. 6 months later, at the end of the school year, he was reading at grade level. This was over a 3 standard deviation increase. Then his friends wanted him to go to school with them for social reasons. So instead of going into special ed and being really frustrated, he's now in general education classes doing just fine. And his mom did this in half hour sessions 3 times a week. And that's all it took. She did what private dyslexic schools couldn't do by following that process.
Well, in your particular case, in your own life, what was your aha moment when you overcame what was your initial diagnosis? And also, since you are the dyslexia professor, what was the aha moment in teaching this for you?
The aha moment for me was when I went to study law school when I had a first grade reading and writing level. And my second day of contracts, I went to see a dyslexic professor named Professor Warner. He called on me. And what they do is they keep asking you questions even if you don't know the answer. It's called the Socratic method to embarrass you. That didn't happen to me. Everything lined up. I was arguing back and forth with him like crazy for 15 minutes. And he said at the end, you couldn't be any more correct. I have to move on to the next case in the interest of time. My classmates, even today, those who finished law school, I audited, they still couldn't do that. So that was my aha moment. Everything just, I was reading within a month, writing within a couple of years. My aha moment was when I did my initial program. This is funded by the New York State Senate. We took the best and brightest high school juniors and seniors. They're writing at the seventh, eighth grade level, the middle school level, one class period a day for the school year. At the end, they were reading and writing as if they were the level of graduate students. Okay, they all went on to college, all graduated GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. The aha moment was when the teacher, Susan Ford, came to me and said, I don't want to be a passenger. I want to be a co-pilot. I learned at that point when I'm teaching teachers, I have to create a flexible curriculum where they can change it to meet their teaching styles and the students they're working with. And then they create things in ways I never even dreamed of, but still get the same results.
Is that part of the problem, the fact that some teachers just don't know how to teach a dyslexic child?
The problem you find with the teaching profession is a lot of these teachers have master's degrees. They've been doing it for decades. My goodness, they could double their income going anywhere else. They just have not been taught by the researchers with something that's effective. As I said, that traditional approach I told you about, that's an Orton Gillingham multisensory structured language approach. Dr. Orton passed away in 1948, Gillingham in the 50s. Hasn't changed a heck of a lot since then. It literally takes, after fourth grade, 4 to 5 years, and the student to teacher ratio is like, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. It's just very inefficient if you want to go back to the traditional approach, because Dr. Orton didn't know about the neuroscience that we know about today.
Your website is dyslexiaclasses.com. Whether somebody is listening to this in my area, your area, or anywhere else in the world, what can they get from your program and by going to your website?
Well, if you go to dyslexiaclasses.com, that's plural with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com, there's a button there that says download free report. Just click on it, answer a few questions. It's the 3 reasons your child's having trouble in school due to dyslexia and how to get past it. Then you are able to go and set up a time to go and speak with me, no cost. We discuss things with you and your child for about a half an hour. I ask them questions and they go, oh, that's like me. And I generally ask, is this how you want to overcome your reading and writing concerns? And the answer is yes. And we work with families on a yearly basis, and we just make it happen at the by far the most effective and affordable way possible.
And by the way, you say affordable. We spoke a little bit off air a couple of days ago. While it can be expensive, you scale it to what people can afford.
Yes. So one of the key things that I found is we have a retail price that works for most people. But I just got done with a homeschooling mom. She's actually a certified teacher for elementary school students, and she's having the hardest time with her son, who's 9 and in fourth grade. And we were able to work it out. So, because I'll be honest with you, most of our materials online, we have a weekly webinar, so we can do this, affordably. And we were able to work within her budget, which was quite, there wasn't much there. But I didn't want her son to suffer, so we were able to work that out.
Excellent. How long have you been doing this, and where do you see it going in the future?
I presented my first case in New York City in 2006. I've been training special ed teachers in New York City for the past 10 years. Where do I see this going? I'm now getting the message out on the news media. I'm writing a book about Kimberly's experience, and I'm hoping to go on the speaking circuit. So I'm hoping to get this out everywhere because now, for the first time, it's simple enough where parents can teach their children to be successful, much more successful than even the best private dyslexic schools, because we're focusing on how the brain actually works and what the child's interested in.
In between you and a dyslexic child is, in most cases, depending upon where you live, an educational system. Is part of the problem the educational system either doesn't understand this or are not funding it properly?
Oh, we're funding it. In New York State, we're spending over 40,000 a year per kid, and the results are horrendous. So with that, when I'm working on my book, New York State just spent a year with its top people coming up with a process of how to handle this. I met Evelyn Whitebay. She was 3 to 4x more effective than the average special ed teacher, and she was on the dyslexia task force for New York State. I've partnered with her to write the book. So when I describe what Kimberly went through, for making Read successful, she's then adding on, this is what educators should do, some other options for parents, and that the whole thing will be in the book that we're writing.
If you could wave a magic wand, what is the one thing that you would change with the educational systems when it comes to dyslexia?
During the intervention period, it's actually two quick things. Number one, at least this, focus on the kid's speciality, what they're really interested in. And number two, stop teaching them from the general to the specific. It's like trying to grab fog for us. Teach from the specific to the general, at least until we get their reading and writing at grade level.
Russell, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. Again, your website is dyslexiaclasses.com. Thank you for being on the show with us.
Thanks for having me.
Russell Van Brocklen, the dyslexia professor. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0840, and you'll find links to his website. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
At first, I thought my chiropractor wasn't any good. But now I stand corrected.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffile program.
I'm standing here with my head held high. For Canada. Hi, Brian Williams here. You know, over the years, I have been fortunate to work so many big international sporting events in so many different countries. And regardless of the country, the reaction was the same. Respect and admiration for Canadians and Canada. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
Available on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and just about every other way you stream audio. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's radio that's everywhere you want to be. In some places you don't.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to not one, but two thriller writers. Plus, we also have a morning shower thought, an idiot of the day, and lots more Stuff All news right here, right now. The California Department of Motor Vehicles told Isis Wharton that she must surrender her personalized license plate reading, "I am ISIS," because it could be interpreted as supporting the Islamic State terrorist group. Wharton, named after the Egyptian goddess Isis, purchased the $50 plate in 2022 and has renewed it annually. She said, "I'm proud of my name. I'm proud that it's on my car. I feel like driving around, it looks cool." The DMV cited Section 206 of the California Code of Regulations, which allows rejection of plates associated with illegal or violent activities. The agency's letter stated, "Regardless of your intention, the configuration 'I am ISIS' can be construed as 'I am Islamic State of Iraq and Syria.'" McGeorge School of Law professor Leslie Jacobs said the plate is protected under First Amendment free speech rights. Wharton can request a hearing to appeal the decision. Well, good luck with that. You know, when I was a kid, I even knew of the Egyptian goddess Isis. In fact, when I was a teenager back in 1975, there was a Saturday morning show about a superhero named Isis.
The secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Cindy Lee, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice.
Geez, I guess in my formative years, this was called grooming. 57-year-old Nicholas Brock would get quite angry if there was something wrong with his food. That was what Oliver Kelly, a prison officer, testified at His Majesty's Prison Bullingdon in Oxfordshire, England. Brock usually complained to senior prison officer Christopher English. However, according to Kelly, but at the time, we were all trying to control 180 prisoners to get their lunch. English didn't have time to speak to Brock, and that made Brock angry. The issue? Brock had a problem with his baked potato, or what's known in the UK as a jacket potato.
Hot potato, hot potato. Hot potato, hot potato.
Brock allegedly told another officer, "I will put a 9mm to the back of his head. Don't think I won't do it." Brock is now on trial for 2 counts of making threats to kill. Before dismissing the jury for the day, Judge Nigel Daly said, "I'm really curious to know what was wrong about the jacket potato." Well, I'm guessing he wanted it fully loaded.
Hot potato, hot potato. Potato, 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 potato.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's only one Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes.
Back in 2012, a member of Publishers Clearinghouse's Prize Patrol told John Wylian of White City, Oregon, "You won $5,000 a week forever." Every January since that day, Wylian has had $260,000 deposited into his account until this year, said Tamar Viach of Cottage Grove, Oregon, who is also missing her annual deposit. "You change people's lives and now you've messed it up." When she contacted Publishers Clearinghouse, they said payments would resume on a quarterly schedule, but the company filed for bankruptcy in April, and at least 10 winners aren't being paid.
The Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Winning it can change your life.
Said the company, "We understand the concerns surrounding unpaid prizes owed to past winners and are taking decisive steps to ensure that future prize winners can participate with absolute confidence." Wait a minute. They're filing for bankruptcy. Future prize winners? Anyway. Meanwhile, Wylian, now 61, retired when he won, but now he's struggling to find a job to make ends meet after being out of the workforce for so long. He said, "I was proud of the fact that I left my children something. Now I can't leave them anything." Well, he can leave them a cautionary tale and some advice. Like, when you win a big prize, take the lump sum at the beginning. Also, this might be the canary in the coal mine because I think the bigger issue is that print magazine subscriptions are going the way of buggy whips.
So watch for the sign of Publishers Clearinghouse and enter.
There's no place like our house.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Michael Wendroff has just released his debut novel, a thriller called What Goes Around. It's his first book, despite the fact that he has publishing in his blood. In fact, he earned an MBA in marketing, and his thesis was on marketing in the publishing industry. Michael joins us from Lake Garda, Italy, via Riverside.com. Hi, Michael.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. So, as I mentioned, you have publishing in your blood. Your mother was in publishing, right?
My mother was, and in fact, I'll tell you 2 things about her. I mean, one is she was really the impetus for writing the story I did in What Goes Around, because the real incentive for doing it was something she said to me the second that I was born, or so I'm told. I was put on her chest. She looked deeply into my eyes and she said, "Oh, how nice to see you again." And it was always that again part that intrigued me, and I always wanted to do something with that. But I went into a business career, and it took a number of years before I finally wrote that book, and that line does play heavily into it. But my mother was in publishing, as you mentioned. She was actually an editor back in the day with New York City publishing firms. And I can distinctly remember her sitting on a weekend on the couch with manuscript pages strewn about her, red pen in hand, and marking those pages up. So I guess I should have been prepared for when my editor got back to me with his edits. They weren't in red pen anymore, but I'd say the comments in the margin of the Word document were probably just as tough. But I guess I was prepared a bit for it for my mother's experience.
Is your mother still with us?
She is not, at least not physically.
Okay. Was she still with us when you wrote your thesis?
She was. And that thesis writing experience was quite interesting because, I had to interview a lot of people in the publishing industry in order to get the thesis done. And I had some help in making contacts because there's a trade journal called Publishers Weekly, and that journal got wind of my project, and the editor of it said, if this turns out well, we may publish that. And she gave me these contacts, and one of the contacts was a editor in chief at Simon and Schuster. And I remember waiting to interview him, and I was, waiting and waiting. It was way past the time of the interview. And then all of a sudden, his door opens up, and he waves me over and says, "Come here, Michael. I want to introduce you to someone." And who is it but Truman Capote? I mean, talk about thriller writers in cold blood. And he looked just as you would expect, in the white suit and the big hat, and it was a lot of fun. But what was even more fun, actually, was that Publishers Weekly trade journal did excerpt my thesis in 3 separate magazine issues, and they actually paid me for it. So I got paid for writing my MBA thesis, and that was the first time I got paid for writing, and I like that.
Did your mother ever try to pull you into the quote unquote family business? And was as far as she's concerned, was your thesis sort of like, oh, this is the beginning. This is where I set the trap.
Well, that's a good point, but she was one that would want me to do what would make me happy, and my thesis really did marry the two things I love: books to begin with, and then I went to business school and learned marketing, and I really became intrigued with that. But I had even more of a publishing background because my mother had remarried a literary agent. And, literary agents are the go-between between authors and traditional publishing houses. The publishing houses won't look at your work unless it comes through an agent. So he was an agent, and a lot of his clients were thriller writers, mystery writers. So, I was all of those type of books were around me for free. So I got into those, and I got to learn from reading tons of them what I liked and what seemed to sell and what worked. And in fact, I also remember that one of his clients was Robert Ludlum, who a lot of people may know from the Bourne movies with Matt Damon. And one time we were invited over to his winter home, which was in the Caribbean. And I remember I got up early one morning and I saw him in his living room, which had a pool in the middle of it and a roof that was open. And he was there sitting there with these yellow legal pads and a Dixon Ticonderoga #2 pencil. And he was scribbling away. And that is how he wrote his 450-page novels by hand. Now, I admired Ludlum's plotting in prose, but, thankfully when it came time for me to write my novel, I had a PC. I don't think I could do it by hand.
So tell us about what Goes Around is about.
So What Goes Around is a thriller about mysterious shootings that are happening in a small town. 2 detectives who hate each other, based on what happened in the police academy together, are assigned to the case. although the relationship does evolve a bit. But on their journey to find out what's going on, they delve into the secret worlds of these terrible hate groups, these incels, supremacists, boogaloo boys. These are actual groups that exist. And a young naive boy is involved, is caught up in this whole thing, and there's tons of twists and turns until we get to that major twist at the end. And I love that the reviewers are saying that it's a real page turner, and J.D. Barker, who's a #1 New York Times bestselling author, said of it, Wendroff expertly weaves a narrative that begs just one more page. So I'm happy for all that. I seem to have achieved what I wanted to do in storytelling.
Did you, during the process of writing this book, did you get, dare I say, closer to your mom?
I would think of her often while I was writing, especially some of the little, I don't know if you call them spiritual, but these other parts of it. And I would often think of words she would tell me about writing, and things like make sure when you're writing you're not just telling a story, but you're showing it. You're showing it happening, and not just telling it. And little tips along the way that I always remembered. So I would say the answer to that is for sure yes.
By the way, when your mother said, "Oh, how nice to see you again," did you ever find out what she meant by that? And do you now have the opportunity to repeat that sentence to her?
Well, what she said she meant by that was that she felt very strongly that she knew me in a prior life. So, I think I will definitely see her again. And when my children were born, I didn't get a chance to say that, but I'm sure sometime in the future that very well could occur.
You mentioned earlier, I mean, you went into marketing, you had your own very successful marketing company. So, what led you to writing this book at the time that you did it? Let me guess, was it the pandemic?
You got it, and I guess that is true for a lot of authors. But it was really, at that point where in my town, as in many, I mean, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't play tennis. You couldn't even go to the beach. So I'd always wanted to write a book. Life and business and all that got in the way. But during the pandemic, I had, no more excuses. So I went ahead and I did it, and I have my own way of going about writing, but it was the pandemic that finally made me do it, and thankfully that did happen for me at least.
And now you have the bug because you want to continue writing, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am happiest when I'm writing. So I'm already writing book 2, and it's going to have the same main characters as in the first book. And of course, it'll be a thriller too. And I think it makes sense that it's almost like branding, where you want the readers to know of you for writing a certain type of book. And if your first book does well, which mine thankfully has, a lot of readers may have established a good relationship with my characters and want to learn more about them. So that's why I would use them again in the second book.
I said in the introduction that we're talking to you from Lake Garda, Italy. You actually divide your time between Sarasota, Florida, and Italy. How did that come about?
I do, and it came about. I'm originally from New York, and then many years in Connecticut, and then about 9 years ago, we moved down to Florida because I was doing marketing consulting, and I can do that basically from anywhere. My largest client was a company called Godrej, which is in Mumbai, India. So they didn't care, where in the USA I lived. And, we did, at that point, there were a lot of snowstorms, and we decided to move down to Florida. And we really enjoyed it. But every summer in those 9 years, it's gotten hotter and more humid. So finally, a couple years ago, we said we got to look for something else. And, given how I love Italian food, we ended up at Lake Garda, which is northern Italy, because, southern Italy can be as hot as Florida, but northern Italy on a lake is quite nice. I'm very fortunate.
Well, congratulations on your new book, your first book, What Goes Around. I understand, by the way, one last question.
Sure.
Your lineage goes beyond your mother, rather, who was in publishing. Tell us about your great-grandfather.
Yes. My great-grandfather was actually brought over from the University of Copenhagen in Denmark by Thomas Edison to go work with him in the labs. That's why my mother is from New Jersey, and he actually had a patent for plastic buttons back before then. People used wood or whatever. So now for me, any chance I get to wear a button-down shirt, I will.
I'm guessing that you don't own a turtleneck.
Right.
Michael, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Michael Wendroff, author of What Goes Around. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0840, and you'll find the links to Michael's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
If you take care of chickens, wouldn't that make you a chicken tender?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a show that is sanitized for your protection.
And still to come in the program, we will talk to the author of She Looks Like Fun. Plus, we do indeed have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on. We don't have any more Stuff File news to share with you because we ran a little long in the first part of the show, so let's just get to our last guest, shall we? Constantinos Koumontzis is a film producer and an author. His debut novel is a thriller entitled She Looks Like Fun. He joins us from Los Angeles via Riverside.com. Hi, Costas.
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I'm curious to know which was completed first, the novel itself or the title?
The novel. So that's actually hilarious because the title came last. I have had about maybe 5 different titles for the book. It really was a work in progress, I think, and a struggle to get the perfect title. And I think I landed on that at the end. I hope so, and I think it's resonated. But yeah, so the title was definitely the last, most climactic thing with putting this whole thing together.
Well, first of all, please describe the topic or the genre of the book, and then you can describe how you came up with the title.
So the book is a psychological thriller, a suspense thriller that I would say teeters a little bit on the dark horror as well as a little bit of satire. And it follows Anne Bonny, who's hiding beneath the facade of the innocent school teacher in Chicago, But she spends her nights as a call girl, masquerading herself through an online escort service to carry out her violent desires. Her two worlds will collide, and as her dark tendencies cross paths with her normal life. She spirals into madness, trying to keep these two lives from combusting. As far as the title goes, I really wanted something that captures the readers and the audience's attention. Originally, I had a few titles in the works, and I had always wanted something that doesn't give away necessarily what the novel is going to be about. I think that it reveals itself a little bit later on. I'm very inspired by music, so there's a few songs that actually are entitled "She Looks Like Fun," and I was listening to the song once, and it kind of clicked for me a little bit, like, oh, this would be fun to use for the novel's title as well.
The story is a thriller.
Yes.
So how did the idea of the story itself come your way?
It was character first for me. As most things are when I'm writing, I've always been interested and inspired by flawed protagonists, anti-heroes. Even when I was a young kid, I was always a little bit more interested in the villains. I always loved, if it was the Batman villains or Star Wars villains. And I always, related a little bit more with them and I thought they were more fun. So I always wanted to write a character like that. And as I got older, my literary tastes followed that same suit. I love Clockwork Orange, and I love the new You series by Caroline Kepnes. And so actually I kind of came up with this character when I was in college in a writing workshop in London. And I let her kind of marinate and simmer a little while for a few years, and then I went about writing the novel about her. And so she came first, this character. That's kind of what motivated me. I had put in a lot of work in college too, and in my writing about characters with trauma, characters with PTSD, or people who kind of toe the line of this mental duality. And I wanted to be able to put you in the head of a character that does terrible things, but still you can find somewhere to relate to them.
Do you feel that for the most part in film or in literature that villains are misunderstood?
I think so. I think the villain, if a good villain is doing what they think is the right thing, they feel justified with what they're doing. They're just doing it in the wrong ways, or they're going about it in a more, I would say, sometimes a more selfish way. I think the hero most oftentimes is very able to put themselves last and to put others first, whereas the villains are a little bit more self-centered.
Now, I mentioned in the introduction that you're not only an author, you're also a film producer, and you produced a short film which came out in 2024 called Touch. And I'm just wondering, because your book just came out, did these two projects overlap?
They overlapped timing-wise. So I actually was working on the script. I'm also developing a screenplay for the novel. So the novel was finished at that point, and I was working on the screenplay for She Looks Like Fun. And then this short film project came my way. A very good friend of mine who was writing, directing, and starring in it, he brought me in to creatively produce and help finance a little bit for this short film. So yes, they definitely overlapped, but I wouldn't say they weren't involved in any way. But they overlapped time-wise.
Well, the reason why I asked the question is I'm just wondering if your brain as a producer and your brain as an author, if they complement each other in either project.
I think so. I definitely steer closer to writing. I think that that's definitely where I like being more. And and I think that this is true for any creative endeavor, that like when you know the different sides of a creative process, it helps. Well, for me, it was a great learning experience. I was able to see what goes into not just the writing and not just the directing or the acting, but also the technical sides, the more business centric sides and the finance centric sides, and what goes into those things. And I was kind of learning on my feet as I did it. It helped me appreciate the holistic process that any film or artistic project is. But I was able to adapt the things that I know as a writer and as an author into that creative producing side as well. And they help each other out.
When you first started working on the book, She Looks Like Fun, did you, in the back of your mind, think that it was going to be eventually a screenplay and either a theatrical film or a television movie?
I definitely hope for it. I'm just as much in love with film and TV as I am with books. And I think anything that I've ever worked on, I've always kind of been like, I want to see, I think I would love to see this translated onto the big screen as well. And I think that as a writer, it's such a big compliment to have an actor who's interested in playing a character that you've written. So it's always kind of there in the background. But I don't let it get in my way when doing the actual writing. I'm kind of focused on just making it the best book it can be and not trying to have all these other outside voices invade that creative space. But it's definitely, I think it's a dream deep down for everything that you write, that you want to see it in every kind of medium. And I think a good story can exist in any medium. And I think it's just it's something that you always look forward to see something that you've created or a world you've created or a character you've created to inhabit the page, then also inhabit the screen in any capacity.
So does the writer in you block out the producer in you who, for instance, might say on a particular scene, oh, this is going to break the budget?
It's a tough thing to do. Yeah, sometimes that producer creeps in, and you gotta kind of silence them at least in the first few drafts. Because you don't really want to have any other all those outside things affecting your creative day, I would say. But you definitely have to keep that in mind. I think it's a third draft kind of mentality to bring. But when you're first getting everything down on the page and you're outlining and you're developing all the characters and the story, I try not to let the two collide. But later on, especially when you're doing screenwriting, that definitely has to be something you do think about once you've hit around the third or fourth draft. But you don't let it control you the best you can.
She Looks Like Fun is an original story, and I know that you've probably written original scripts as well.
Mm-hmm.
How does that differ in the process of writing an original novel and writing an original script?
Oh, that's a good question. So it really comes down to the muscles you're using, I think. For novel writing, you definitely have a little bit more control. You are kind of director, writer, producer, and actor when you're putting a novel together. And then with screenwriting, there's a little bit less control you have as the writer, and you're a little bit more. I don't love using the word putting together the blueprint for the movie, but you have to know that it's a little bit more of a collaborative process. And what you hope with a script is that someone will see your vision and will expand upon it. And you're going to be writing a little bit more cinematically. And I would say that the pacing and the amount of words is the biggest thing. I mean, in a book, you can kind of have this free will to write as you please, where in a screenplay, every single word counts. And so you really got to nail every single line and use the white space and know that every word you use has to hit. Whereas with a book, you have a little more freedom.
Well, even though you're a writer and have been a writer for a while, this is your debut novel. So now that you've done this thriller entitled She Looks Like Fun, as you sit back and enjoy the process of having done it, what do you know now that you didn't know when you started?
Well, I did just finish doing the audiobook, and that was a huge learning curve. I had a friend who did an amazing job. She read it, and I did the narration. And I kind of had to teach myself how to do the audio editing. And that was something that I had no idea how to do. I had no experience with it, so that was something that I had to learn. And now I'm going forward, I think it's a good skill to have. And I wouldn't love to do it again, but that was definitely something. But I also think this whole process has given me a lot more confidence with my own work and having it out there and having people reacting to it. It's definitely a new feeling, and it's something that you kind of take with you when you're writing your next story. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is like, this is out in the world now, because as a writer, you get so used to your work being something that only you and, obviously your editors and people like that are in your industry circle experience. But now you have random people on the street reading it. It's an interesting thing, and to have people to see and witness someone's visceral reaction to something that you've written. And it's very rewarding.
Well, congratulations on your book. It's the thriller entitled She Looks Like Fun. And thank you, Kostas, for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Kostas Koumontzis, author of She Looks Like Fun. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0840, and you'll find the link to Kostas' website, plus links to either amazon.com or amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
A scheme to make money by posting rage-baiting videos online backfired on a guy in Pinellas Park, Florida, who was arrested for menacing neighbors with a large stick. Responding to several 911 calls from the Palm Grove Village mobile home park, police discovered 34-year-old Ang Tai in a common area yelling loudly at his mother, juveniles, and the mother of the children. Tai reportedly told police he did this to record reactions and get money via rage-baiting clips posted on social media. Investigators reported that Tai confronted several neighbors with a large stick while waving it around, generating fears. His other 12:45 a.m. antics included yelling at children, using a racial slur, and blocking vehicles from driving through the Pinellas Park property where Tai resides. Tai, charged with disorderly conduct, pleaded no contest to the misdemeanor charge. He was adjudicated guilty and fined $550. The auteur was released from the county jail after 2 days in custody. By the way, I'm posting Tai's mugshot where I think you can literally see his soul. Now, why? Oh, why? Would you menace the neighbors where you actually live just so you can record them to post rage-baiting videos? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0840. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0840. Email me at peter@thestuffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Peter is a man who came from very meager beginnings, and he's continued to go downhill from there.